Today's interview is with a good buddy of mine, Nashville bassist Steve Forrest, who has toured with Rick Derringer, Lee Ann Womack, and many others. You could often see Steve Forrest playing with Reggie Wooten and friends down at Rudy's Jazz Club in Nashville. Today, I wanted to reach out and talk to Steve Forrest a lot about his time playing with the guitar legend Rick Derringer. This is an awesome interview. Check it out. And also, if you're interested in connecting with Steve Forrest or you want him to play bass on some of your tracks, I'll provide the links for him down in the description of the video. Thanks for watching.
Nice. What's up, Bad Brad?
What's happening, man? Good to see you, brother.
It's been a minute. It's good to see you. Good to hear you. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, man. It's been about a year since I've seen you.
Mm-hmm. That's a year too long.
It is, man. And, I'm glad to have you here today because all day long I've been reading the comments. I did a post on YouTube, a tribute to Rick Derringer.
Yeah.
Put together a little video collage with some pictures and telling all the amazing stuff that he's done and some revelations of seeing him at trade shows and stuff like that over the years. And, hearing the testimony of all the fans and all the people out there, it's just been nonstop. And you were the first person I thought of when I heard of Rick Derringer's passing, because I know of your experience touring with Rick Derringer and how much you loved that gig and playing that music. And I heard some of the stories that we've talked about on this. And so I want to let everybody know that you are a Nashville bassist that is always working. In fact, tonight he's going to be playing with Reggie Wooten at Rudy's Jazz Room.
Correct.
And this is a Wednesday when we're filming this.
Yeah, we wrap this up. I'll hop in the car and head downtown.
Yeah.
I've been playing with Reg for over 30 years, man.
And that's how we met.
It is. How we met, where we met, was, you remember the Courtyard Cafe?
Yep.
Out by Hickory Hollow.
Yes.
And I remember, I want to say Jenny Heff was playing drums with us. Or it might have been Mike Donovan. And it was a doobie gig. God rest his soul. And all I kept hearing was about this dude, Bad Brad. And they kept saying, Bad Brad, Bad Brad. And I'm like, what is he going to come in and whoop everybody? What is this guy? I had no clue. And that is where we met. That's the first place we played together, first place we met. And that was years ago.
Yeah. So that was on Bell Road, was it?
It was out by Hickory Hollow Mall, back when it used to be a mall.
Yeah.
When people used to shop there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's so 30 years ago then.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, bro. We've known each other a minute.
Yeah, and that's wild, man. And let me say, as far as playing bass guitar, Steve Forrest can take it as far out, as far in, as far around. He's a participant in the weekly thump offs down there at what used to be 3rd and Lindsley, and now it's the jam is down at Rudy's Jazz Room. But
and every time somebody raves about it, I just say, fooled him again.
That's what I used to say. And here's the thing, man. As far as knowing songs, you're probably the one guy in town that knows more songs than anybody.
It's not as much. Well, I mean, it's not that I know them. If I've heard it, it's in there somewhere. I may have never, and most of the stuff I've never played, but I am not unique in that there are logical choices in music usually,
Yeah.
and you can just kind of tell what's going to happen. I listen.
Yeah.
The biggest thing. Do I know all those songs? No, I just listen real well to where everyone else is going, and I'll make it a passing tone to go to it if I'm not, or
Yeah.
fake my way through it. Is it just like the record? Not necessarily, but we can get there. So
Yeah. And you are the middle generation of a 3 generations of Nashville musicians,
there you go. Yeah,
right?
my dad, Phil Forrest. The majority of what he did was vocal stuff, background vocals, but he played 12 different instruments. Uh, and lucky for me, one of those was bass. Funny, I first wanted to be a drummer, and it's the one instrument that wasn't in the house. I came up with this plan of, well, maybe if I can get a snare drum for Christmas and get a hi hat for my birthday, and then the next Christmas I can get a bass drum. How many years does it take to build a drum set? And I never got past the snare drum. My dad did give me a snare drum, so I used to work on rudiments and stuff on the snare and all that. But the coolest instrument that he had, as far as I was concerned, was this bass guitar that was in the case. Matter of fact, it's sitting
Let's
right back.
see it. Can we see it?
1957. Huh?
Can we see it?
The 57 P bass
Yeah, 57 P bass, folks.
coming to you. Coming to you.
This is the
Coming live.
family heirloom.
1957. The name flaked off of the top a long time ago. Those are not stock tuners. This is a player's bass.
Yeah.
This is not a collector's bass.
Yeah.
So that's the bass I inherited from my father. It's always over there in the ready. I just recorded with it last night.
Wow.
So that's the first bass that I ever played.
Wow.
And I own it. So that will move down the family line. So that was my father, and then of course Campbell, my son. Oh, excuse me. Currently drumming for David Lee Murphy. They just finished up the Brooks and Dunn tour. I got to go see them with that, and ran into another very good friend of yours that's playing bass now with Brooks and Dunn, Mr. Ira Dean.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
he's back on the road.
He's back on the road, baby. He posted a picture the other day. It was hilarious. It was a picture of him playing in front of his rig and everything. Looked great, man. He's playing that Sadowski, got the little Walter amp. He said, caption this picture. Somebody said, from a pony to a stallion. You get that. He loved it, man. He said, that's the winner.
That's a good one, man.
Yeah. Ira's a good dude, man. But
Yeah.
I have not spent time with Ira, but man, he's just right off the bat, man. We click. He's a good dude. I like him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's 3 generations of musicians and not carpetbaggers, people that actually are from Nashville and worked in the music business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so we've established sort of the impetus for this, but what brought you to Rick Derringer?
David Northrup. Fantastic drummer. David, David.
Yep.
Played with he's played with the Oak Ridge
Boz
Boys,
Scaggs.
Travis Tritt, played with Boz Scaggs. I think he's currently with Billy Dean. Great drummer. The bass player that was doing it was Tony Nagy. Tony.
Yeah.
Excellent dude, man. Great player. And I don't know. I think he had some scheduling conflicts or something.
Yeah.
And so they had to make a change. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So I got the call, and next thing I know, I'm in Vegas playing with Rick. Shortly after that, we're opening up for Steely Dan. Rick introduced me to Donald Fagen.
And I want to hear all of that. But give me this setup for your first gig in Vegas. Tell me about the process, one, of learning these songs.
I'll tell you the process, man. Of course, I was familiar with a lot of Rick's stuff, But like with anything, unless you're playing it out on a gig, you've never played it. I'd heard so much of it, but a lot of it I hadn't played. So, I spent the time with, here are the tunes, here's all the material. Rick sent it to me. David gave Rick my number. Rick called me and he sent me everything. Um, and I started working on the material. And the coolest thing, we rehearsed in Northrop's garage, which is his studio. It's a converted garage. So I'm like, I'm in a garage band with Rick Derringer. What alternate universe is this? And there's Rick. We're in Dave's garage, and we're, playing rock and roll hoochie coo. It was mind blowing. It just,
Yeah.
kind of dreamish.
Yeah.
But I think the first show that we did was in Vegas at the Golden Nugget. That was the second time I'd been there. Infamous room that used to belong to Frank Sinatra. We used his dressing room, of course.
Wow.
Yeah, it is very cool. You've been out there, I'm sure.
Yep. Yeah, I played the Nugget.
Yeah. So that's where it started with Rick. And then, just as shows added on the books, we played them. And I think it was just 2 years pretty much that we played together. The last show we were supposed to do that was being talked about, which I was really looking forward to, was playing with Edgar Winter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the big 2020 shutdown happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's canceled. Nothing happened. And that was it. That did it. That ended the whole thing.
Yeah. And
So,
you could have been continuing on with Rick, because it seemed like you guys had the unit. It was strong. You and Northrop as the rhythm section, you guys could have gone and kept doing that thing, but the COVID thing kind of shut it down. But I want to speak on the playing. The skill level of Rick Derringer is mind-blowing.
people don't know.
People have no idea that a guy from that era is playing miles and miles more advanced than any of the bigger name guys, the legends, the household names. Can you speak on that?
Rick had a facility on the guitar that, of course, you only know what you're allowed to hear. So what came on radio, pop radio, rock radio, that's what you heard the most of Rick Derringer, unless you did a deep dive and you were a real fan and getting into more of his stuff. He had jazz records. He had, all kinds of different stuff. I wish I could speak on what his influences were. I don't know, honestly, where his influences came from, but his playing was not anything to take lightly at all.
Yeah.
The man knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. So it was fantastic. And when we were touring, he was 70, let's see, he just passed at 77. So he was what, 72, 71?
72, 73, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, 73, and killing,
Yeah.
playing great. Some of the things that we did, we dropped like a half step or a whole step maybe. Some of the tempos, we played a little bit slower than the record on some of the songs, just because it felt better that way.
Yeah.
Honestly, live. It didn't have to be all up and
Yeah.
But fantastic player, man.
Yeah. When I listened to just a little piece of him playing a solo the other day, because when somebody passes, it's like you go back to that catalog and you start re-listening to things and then hearing some of the things that you didn't hear. And man, I'm hearing him play like whole tone scales and these altered runs and all of this stuff, none of which you never heard Clapton, you never heard Jeff Beck, You never heard, all these other bigger names with that melodic intensity. And then he's tapping. And he's tapping, in a style that reminds you of what you're familiar with hearing Edward Van Halen. It's different, but you hear it and you're like, that's an Eddie thing. But a lot of people are saying that he was doing that before Edward. Can you speak on that?
Not with authority. I do believe that there was an incident where maybe he was playing and they were opening with Van Halen at one point. I think I've heard this story. Here it is going out all over the world, so I got to be careful what I say because I don't want to speak
Well,
out of
it's
turn.
out there, and I've had a few people kind of confirm it.
Yeah, yeah, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. I don't know who started that first or where it happened. Obviously, we know who gained the popularity from it and brought it to the forefront with
Yeah.
Edward. But I mean, Rick has influenced a lot of guitar players, and there are a lot of, I wouldn't even say a lot, I would say all of the guitar gods respect Rick.
Yeah.
And we'll mention something about Rick. He's always held in high regard. He's playing, how many Steely Dan records was he playing on?
Yeah.
I don't even know
Yeah.
how much of that stuff. He played, if I'm not mistaken, he played on the original demo that got Fagan or Steely Dan their deal.
Yeah. I don't know. I
Yeah,
can't confirm that. Yeah.
but I heard stories and stuff. There's always conversation on the road and those kind of things. But his playing was fabulous.
Yeah.
He was a pleasure to work with. Never upset. I remember I just saw because of his recent passing, all these videos and things that are up, and Tim McDonald was our keyboard player. Tim?
I
Tim,
don't think I do.
fantastic player, B3 player too. He's great. We had a killer band. But Tim posted a video that I had not seen before that's up now of us just doing a sound check. We played the anniversary of the Ludlow Garage in, what is that, Cincinnati?
I think so.
I think, or Cleveland, or anyway, whatever it is. But during the sound check, there was, just a mix issue that Rick was like, we got too much of this. And the sound guy apologized, and some diva type people might have an attitude where, and Rick goes, no, that's fine. That's why we're here. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like there's not a problem.
Yeah.
He was just cool. He was just
Yeah.
even flow. Uh, the Rick that I knew was after he had his major conversion to Christianity,
Yeah.
and that drove him. Serious patriot too.
Yeah.
Which some of the songs you can tell from the song. What is the Real American? That was
Yeah.
the intro for the wrestler.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan's intro, Real American. That was a Rick Derringer song.
Yeah.
He, but he's a great guy, great player, and I cherished the time that I got to spend working with him. It was one of those experiences that I would have never guessed that I would be playing with a Rick Derringer.
Yeah.
If my brother had still been around, he'd have flipped out. He was a huge Rick Derringer and Edgar fan and all that stuff. So he would have flipped out. Every time we took the stage, I thought about my brother, which was so that was a cool thing.
That's amazing. Now, something that I thought about and brought up in my video when I was thinking about the story about, Edward Van Halen supposedly kicking Derringer off a tour because Rick was quoting, Van Halen licks or something during the show, or maybe playing You Really Got Me or some of these things. I thought back of a Van Halen bootleg I heard years ago of Van Halen playing in a bar, playing Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo.
Oh, wow.
If you can imagine
Isn't that
David Lee
ironic?
Roth, singing Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and then thinking of the little part where the scratchy part, the little scratchy guitar part he does in that, and thinking that probably influenced Edward to do Atomic Punk with the, wiki, wiki, wiki,
It
all
could
of
be.
that.
I mean, we're the sum of all of the things that we've heard.
Yeah.
So clearly, Rick was doing it before Ed was,
Yeah.
as far as playing, and things were heard, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, not that any of that matters. The comparison thing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, to me, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's
Yeah.
we all speak a language,
Yeah.
and guitar players all play the same notes, and they're all influenced by everything they hear. We all are. All of us
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
influenced.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think that's that's really the take home from all this. And and you were telling before, you were telling the story about playing with Steely Dan. And I remember you regaled me with the entire kind of the whole scenario of getting to hang out with Fagan and all of that stuff. Can you recount that? Because here's the thing, as a musician, getting to open for Steely Dan in our realm, in our muso realm, that's like the highest pinnacle of dudeness.
Yeah, yeah. Another pinch me moment that just didn't seem real. Um, we were in Michigan, I believe. It was an outdoor, an amphitheater, outdoor. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of it or exactly what city it was. We were there for sound check. Of course, the headliner is going to sound check before the opener, and we walk up, and the whole Steely Dan band is running through tunes. Fagan wasn't there yet; his bus was late, and it was amazing to hear that band playing everything minus his keyboard part and his vocal. It it's the most perfect sound I've ever heard from a band.
Wow.
Those guys are amazing. That band is incredible. Obviously, the music, we know the music.
Yeah.
The three girls that were doing the background vocals, I've never heard three people sound more like one person singing three different parts. They were spot on. Everything was flawless. Carlock and his drum, all the guys, and Freddie Washington on bass.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't build a better band.
No.
But Fagan shows up, and Northrop and I are standing off in the wings just watching the sound check. And he walks up and he starts to walk towards the stage. He turned around and walked back, and he said, "I need to smoke first." And he had a cigarette, and he's standing there, and he was kind of standoffish. And then Rick came up. And then once he saw that we were with Rick, then everything changed. And Rick introduced us, and Fagan says, "I've known Ricky since he was a little boy."
Wow.
Just conversational at that point. And we had not a long visit, a short visit. Those two talking, really. I mean, what am I talk to Fagan about? He and Rick were catching up.
Yeah.
And we watched the rest of their sound check. It was incredible. But we went on, did the show, and I didn't see it, but I was told afterwards that when we were playing, that Donald was in the wings watching us.
Wow.
I didn't know that. I'm glad I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then when it was done, I was part of the time I spent out in the audience, and part of it, over by Monitor World in the wings. Northrop and I were up there, and Rick was up there too. And we were just standing there, and Rick looked over. He said, "I do believe this is absolutely the best live band I've ever heard in my life." And we concurred.
Yeah.
Fantastic. They did I mean, I don't want to go, the whole thing talking about Steely Dan. we spend too much time on that. But
you can do a little bit.
when it was over with, and Fagan leaves and he walks off, and I see him walk down the ramp, and we're just standing there, David Northrup and Rick and I, and Catherine, my wife, was there too. And we're just kind of looking at each other, just going, wow, this was magical. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's Fagan right in front of us.
Wow.
So he came back to tell Rick. He said, Rick, it was so great to hear you. You sounded wonderful. He looked at us. He said, all of you sounded great. He said, the band was fantastic.
Wow.
Okay, cool. Thanks. What do you do with that? It was just, it's a high compliment. He didn't have that. He didn't have to come back. He didn't have to speak positive comments like that. So that's how you knew it was genuine.
Yeah.
So, and then we left, went back to the hotel. The next morning, we're on a plane, and we flew, and we hopped in a van, and we went and played a biker rally. There's the contrast. It was so cool.
Yeah.
The biker rally was great too.
Yeah.
It was a plywood stage with a tarp over the top. And I just had to laugh at the contrast of from opening for Steely Dan to playing a biker rally at a lake. And Rick just wanted to play the music.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great story, because Donald Fagen has known to be rather cantankerous. For the word of the day, cantankerous.
Cantankerous. It's a good word, Brad.
And so for him to stop and take the time and compliment Rick, and then even compliment you guys, like you said, you knew it was real.
Yeah, he didn't have to do that. So that was very cool. That's my Donald Fagen moment.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, what were you thinking? That's such a tough position to open for a band like that. Do you feel any competitive edge, or do you tighten up the reins just a little bit? Do you maybe change your approach, knowing that oh shit, we're playing in front of some heavy cats?
If you change your approach, you're going to mess up. Do what you do. Do what got you there. I had that same thing happen when I was playing with Leanne Womack. We were opening for Vince Gill. And Vince Gill and the whole band, they're standing there watching us play the opening set. I'm singing background vocals going, and this time I knew I'm going, Vince Gill is watching us and listening to everything that happens. Oh my gosh, don't mess up. That almost distracted me, and I had to, shut it out and just do what you do. Do what you do, play your part. So, yeah, it can get in your head if you let it, but you got to remember why you're there. You couldn't do the job. You wouldn't do your job. Do your job, and don't get caught up in the head trip of who's watching. Nerves don't usually happen with me, because I understand I'm there for a reason. I wouldn't be there if I wouldn't qualify.
Yeah. And coming from a second generation musician and stuff like that, I mean, it's natural. It's not out of the element. It's not out of something that you haven't seen happen, from your dad, and now seeing your son out there on the big stage. It's
I never was starstruck, I guess is the word. I was when I met Chuck Rainey. And there've been a couple of spots like that, folks that I idolized as a bass player.
Yeah.
But it's just not something that ever was a part of me, because I grew up going with him over to the Opry House and meeting, seeing, famous people. And as a kid, you just kind of get used to it and don't think that much about it.
Can you name drop a few that your dad brought you around?
I remember one time, this is a cool story. I remember one time Dad was on the Smokey and the Bandit soundtrack, doing background vocals. And it's really cool for me now. Anytime I get to play like Eastbound and Down, I'm singing my dad's vocal part.
Wow.
But I remember Jerry was one of them. And it's interestingly enough, It was never released. I don't know what happened with it, but I did a recording one time on a track that was something for Jerry Reed, and word got back to me that he said, "Son, that boy can play." The way it was said, I'm like, well, he must have said that. That sounds just like him.
Yeah.
Roy Clark, uh, gosh, anybody who would have been around TV stuff over at the Opry House,
Yeah.
all those folks. So, that bunch of folks.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And like I said, seeing your son now out there, on this Brooks and Dunn tour, that was a huge tour, man.
Yeah.
What did you have any advice for him going out there and doing that?
Not by that point. I kind of stopped. At that point with Campbell, there's no need for me to start trying to give him advice. He's on his own road now.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a level-headed kid.
I certainly did have lots of things to tell him, for years and years coming up, whether he wanted to hear them or not. But
Yeah.
I've got no place in telling him now because he's doing a great job. He's a
Yeah.
pro. He's
Yeah.
a pro. One thing, proud dad moment. Everybody from both camps out there, the Brooks and Dunn crew, all the guys in that band, and then of course all the guys in David Lee's band, they just speak so highly of Campbell.
Wow.
And what more as a dad can you ask for? So he's doing great. He's doing really well. He's working all the time too.
That's amazing. Now, one thing that I wanted to bring up today,
Come on.
and it's a funny story. It's getting back to the Rick Derringer thing. I think
Stuff is we used to have funny stories in the green room.
Well, it's always about the green room, right?
Yeah.
But what about going to Fiji with Rick Derringer? Can you give us some of this crazy story?
Do you really have to bring up Fiji?
Fiji is amazing, bro. This is
Fiji
epic.
Amazing. I didn't really get to see a whole lot of the beauty of Fiji because I was in the trenches of trying to salvage a gig and get paid for it, which did not happen until a year later with much bulldogging from Mr. Dave Pomeroy, the president of the Nashville Musicians Association. Dave Pomeroy got everybody paid on that gig. And the Nashville Musicians Union and Dave Pomeroy represent and help not just the members of the union. They're just there to do what's right. And Pomeroy is the one that got us paid.
Wow.
Yeah, they got us to Fiji. You fly that far away. And Rick was the only one smart enough as an artist to get at least half of his money up front before he went. Fiji, the water.
Yeah, so basically so people know what we're talking about, you guys got contracted to go play some festival in Fiji, right?
Yes, and I was asked if I could put them in touch with Rick. So I made that connection, and that's the reason it was there. I honestly, it's been so long now, I don't remember the details of what we were supposed to be doing there, who it was for. It was promoted as this great big concert and all, military stuff and all these dignitaries and this, that, and the other. And we end up in a ballroom of a hotel with maybe 15 people in there. The whole thing was a mess. It was a mess. So, lots of lessons learned for a lot of people that, you can't always trust folks that you think you can trust.
Yeah. I've had that same experience flying all the way to the Philippines and bouncing to different islands. And one of the islands they got your posters like all over the island and all this. And you're thinking, man, this is going to be a big thing. And then you go and there's like 10 people in the audience and the promoter didn't make the money. And so then you're like going, are we going to get paid? It's a bad situation to be in.
right before we were going on, the main dude, because one of the things in our contracts, we had contracts. We were to be paid before we played. And where's the money? And lots of talk and lots of promises and lots of shell game and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, you're there, make the best of it. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
And I went there to play music, and I went there to perform for the people, and that's what I ended up doing. Some folks refuse to play, and I don't blame them.
Wow.
That's fine. I don't know if he was supposed to perform or not, but I know Kelly Hansen from Foreigner was there too.
Wow.
Gosh, I forget. Honestly, I can't remember who all else was there.
Yeah.
And they had some local musicians, and one of the things I was contracted to spend some time playing with the local musicians, and support bass for some other artists or whatever. So my contract was a little different from a lot of the other folks that were there. But yeah, it was quite an experience. Fiji is something that just puts a smile on my face.
Well, here's the good thing. It all ended positively because even though it took a year, you did get paid.
I did get paid. Thank you, Dave Pomeroy and the Nashville Musicians Association.
So
Local number 257. I got to give them a shout out.
Local 257, and these are important lessons. I get a lot of people that watch the channel that want to know about the business, and they want to know how things work. And I've told people, don't count your chickens before they're hatched.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ballpark and say maybe they offered you $5,000.
Okay, that's a good ballpark.
Okay, and so you think, okay, well that's a good payday, right? That's a good payday, and it's probably what, a week's worth of work, right?
Oh gosh, I don't remember how long it was. I don't think it was a full week.
Yeah.
It wasn't a full week.
But you're paid for your time, and you're paid for sometimes the more stuff you got to go through, that's where, you get a decent little payday, right?
I was very happy with the deal.
Yeah.
As presented.
But then here's the thing. You can't count on that money until it's actually in the bank. And that's sort of the moral of it.
But there's another thing too, is if you're going to do stuff where you're dealing in high dollars and contracts and such, you got to have somebody who's got your back. You got to have somebody who's got your back, because Steve Forrest alone and by himself does not have the power to fight multi-million-dollar, organizations and boards of directors and so forth about all this stuff. That's where, thank God, the musicians union had the backs of all the musicians, the ones who were members of the union and the ones who weren't.
Wow.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm singing the praises of Dave Pomeroy.
And what was Rick Derringer's perspective of all this? Because you knew it was kind of messed up when you got there, right?
Well, yeah, but again, I'll go back to what I said about Rick before. I never saw Rick get upset about anything.
Yeah, yeah.
I saw Rick get upset. This was not. How long has the man been in the business?
Yeah.
The first time he's dealt with something like that? No. He knew what he was. Again, he's the one that got half his money up front, at least.
Yep.
So they flew him over first class. He knew how to take care of what he needed.
Yeah.
I mean, they got when he was 18 with the McCoys, his first tours with the Rolling Stones. Wow. That's came out of the gate.
Yeah. Yeah, and he had a #1 song with Hang On Sloopy.
Hang On Sloopy. Yeah. Yep.
That's a big point, man. That for him. But here's the thing. I would think because he had such a good personality, he had to kind of see the humor in what was going on. And I would have been laughing, dude. If I'd have been there, I would have been laughing my ass off. I would have been going, dude, we're screwed, dude.
The meeting with the head dude, Bad Brad would have said, "Here's what's going to happen. Let me tell you what's going to happen."
Oh, I would have.
I know that, Brad.
I would have said, okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. We're gonna go down there. This is gonna be a hot mess. We'll be lucky if we see a dime for this. We're
Yeah,
screwed.
I like I said, I wasn't. None of it was the end of the world, so I
Yeah.
wasn't worried about it like that. But again, I'm very thankful that Dave Pomeroy and the union stepped in for us and hounded them for a year to get us paid.
That's crazy, man. I think that's an all-time record
Yeah,
that I've ever heard. And then the fact that you still got it after a year.
yeah.
Usually after a couple months or 3 months, you kind of write it off. But it's like it was like mailbox money from heaven when it finally came, right?
Well, the timing was perfect. The timing was perfect because I believe that happened just as the whole shutdown thing was happening. I believe that was the last thing I did with Rick.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I think that was the very last thing that we did. And we didn't actually play.
Yeah.
Not Rick. Rick didn't play.
Wow.
Did not play. Um, it never got to that. Like I said, the whole thing just fell apart. It was a complete fiasco. But enough of that. They have nice water.
They
Very
do have amazing water.
amazing water, man. Yes, sir.
Well, let's speak about this as far as versatility. I like to tell people on my channel that, the trends in the business come and go, whether it's hair metal or grunge or new metal or rap or bro country or old school country or outlaw or whatever else. And that being able to play different styles, I know for you, you have one foot down on Broadway sometimes playing those, kind of country-ish kind of gigs. But I know you from playing R&B gigs.
Yeah.
And those are two entirely different styles of bass playing.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to do those different styles has, made it so that you can work all the time.
Correct. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to elaborate on that. I listened to a lot of stuff growing up. And the bigger influences, I mean, I loved Earth, Wind and Fire and Gino Vanelli and anything in that vein of stuff. I learned a lot about playing listening to that. But again, everything it's using these ears. Listen, just listen. Listen, don't talk, listen. And if you have a musical vocabulary and if you've studied enough of a style, it doesn't, just listen. You know what to do. You'll know what. So, even with upright with the jazz, I mean, I grew up in a house where Oscar Peterson was always playing.
Wow.
Ray Brown, huge influence on me, you know. No, I don't want to add effects using hand gestures. This just popped up on my um Ray Brown, huge influence, anybody in the jazz vein of stuff. Listen to all that, I absolutely love upright. And of course, the way I play on upright, it's different from the way I'm playing stuff on electric or whatever. You got to you've got to honor the, what the style is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just listened to a whole lot of different stuff. When I was young, I would turn on the radio, the FM dial, and I would start way over on the left side of the dial. And it didn't matter what kind of music it was. I did, usually the classical stuff was toward the left end of the dial.
Yeah.
classical, and I would just see what I could hear and try to play along with. And then I'd roll up to, oh, here's an easy listening thing. Then I'm playing what, Barry Manilow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rolling up, and then there's country around the 95s or something like
Yeah.
that. And on up to the rock end of the dial. And just everything that I listened to, I tried to play with.
Yeah.
Tried to play what I was hearing. And it wasn't about whether or not, which form of music was my favorite. Uh, it was a matter of I wanted to play along with whatever it was. I wanted to be a bass player.
Yeah.
And I knew enough to know, well, I'm in Nashville, but I wanted to be a bass player. I always wanted to be a bass player.
Yeah.
And I better listen to all of it.
Yeah.
And all of it.
Yeah, and cop the different tones. Like I've seen you, you'll play closer to the bridge, you'll do that plucked kind of thumb thing to get upright style tones.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, man, like you said. And I'm of the same mindset. I just want to play my guitar. I don't care what the band leader calls.
I don't either.
And it's like, I'm going to have fun. It's music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it would be fun to be in Motley Crue for about a week.
Do you get tired of that though?
But you'd get tired of it. Yeah, because you can't, there's no other room for, and this is something maybe you can speak on, playing artist gigs. And like you said, if you play with Motley Crue for a week, you might get tired. But people ask me, what is my favorite type of gig? And I actually said, I actually prefer playing weddings.
We had some fun.
than any of the gigs, because I could play different stuff.
Yeah.
I could challenge myself on that gig. But when you're playing an artist gig and you're playing the same solo note for note off the record and whatever, well, after a while, it's just automatic pilot.
Exactly. I mean, I've been offered recently. There was an artist gig that I was offered, and I turned it down because, one, as much as I'm working in town, the money wasn't going to be better than what I'm making in town and sleeping in my own bed every night.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, all I could think of was the monotony of playing the same set night after night after night. And then I'm going to phone it in. Anybody.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard. Mad respect to the guys that do it, and they do it convincingly, that they really turn it on night after night after night, and they don't phone it in.
Yeah.
Mad respect for those guys. I would like to think I could do that, but I know in my heart of hearts, that's not me.
Yeah.
Not me. I like the variety. I love that I'm going to play a straight ahead country gig, and then I'm going to go play, Love Supreme with Reggie on a Wednesday. Or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to, it just, the variety. I love it. I'm fortunate, and I don't take that for granted.
Yeah.
There are a lot of players that would love to be in the shoes that I'm wearing.
Yeah.
In this town, and I'm aware of that. And how it happened, there's no magic formula. It's not a magic formula. I sure, it helps that I grew up here, so I was already in the scene. But I came into this. I started out playing in cover bands. Your basic rock and roll weekend cover band things at the hotel lounge. And then the thing that changed for me was when I met Reggie Wooten.
Yeah.
That's when things really took off.
Yeah.
I played the Reg at a house party. I sat in. Paul Chapman and Raymond Massey were playing. And I sat in and ended up playing a whole set. Reg just kept calling tunes, and I knew all the tunes.
Yeah.
Next day, my phone was ringing.
Wow.
So that was my launch into the R&B world in Nashville.
Yeah.
And the jazz world too.
Yeah. That's a huge lesson for anybody listening right now. go, learn a ton of tunes, know all the standard stuff from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And if you're younger than us, you probably already know the 90s stuff, which that's kind of our cutoff point. At least for me,
Yeah,
it is.
rock is where you start losing me.
I start losing me at 90s rock. But
Yeah.
but here's the thing, man. You learn all that stuff, right? And you did, even though you're from here, there's no like nepotism and, oh, well, this is Steve, so they just walk you right into a
No,
recording session.
no,
You had to start playing in a weekend band, start, getting your feet wet, learning a bunch of songs, practicing at home, doing all that stuff. And then you get on a gig, you sit in with somebody, and then all of a sudden the phone starts ringing because they realize this guy's ready to go.
Well, let me tell you something about that, though. Something to touch on, and it's about having to learn the material. When I said the very next day my phone was ringing, it was Doobie. And Doobie called me. He said, "Hey, Reggie Wooten gave me your number. Said you can play bass. You're a great bass player." Okay. And he had 2 weekends booked at Mayor Bulls. You remember Mayor
Yeah,
Bulls?
that was the hot spot,
It was
man.
a hot spot, man. And I'm just going, "Oh, cool. I play at Mayor Bulls."
Yeah.
Show up for the gig, and they start calling out standards. And what I realized is, even though I might be familiar with the song, I don't know titles. That was one thing.
Oh,
And then everything that I didn't know, I made note of it.
yeah.
Had he had another option for bass, I would have been replaced after that first night.
Wow.
I went the next morning to Tower Records that used to be over on West
Yep.
End. And every song that he called that I didn't know, I found it. I found the artist. I bought the CDs. I came home and I put them on and I started listening. And that's the first thing I did. I didn't try to play, I just listened. And then I played along with it. That next night, this all happened Friday. I sucked. Saturday morning, when Tower Records opened, I was there. I bought the music. Saturday night, I killed the gig.
Yeah.
So, you got to invest. You can't just wing it. You can't just walk in going, "Oh, I can play."
Yeah. Yeah.
Know the material, you can't. I don't
Yeah.
know how good you are. So, yeah, I can fake my way through a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff you can't fake.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
put in the.
And then that's a great lesson, man, to know that I've had similar situations like that where you go and you get the call to play with some random dude at the last minute on a Friday, and you go and maybe, well, I didn't know this tune or I didn't know that tune. and,
Mhm.
and then those Nashville gigs, man, they just call stuff. And then there were a lot of tunes over the years that I learned on the gig,
Yeah.
because there were no set lists, there was nothing. They just, hey, we need a guitar player.
That's
And,
where that's where the saying comes from, the right way, the wrong way, and the broad way.
yeah.
People learn stuff on the gig so much. Fortunately for me, the guys that I started doing the Broadway thing, two were instrumental for me doing Broadway work. One was Matt McAtee. He's the first guy I did an actual Broadway gig with back in 2012, maybe 2010. I don't know, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Uh, and I learned tunes from working with him.
Yeah.
And throw me hand signals for numbers, throw me numbers, calling changes. The other one was Jason Jordan.
Yeah.
And Jason, to this day, I play with so many different people that do so many songs in so many different keys. There is no one key for any song.
Yeah.
The downside of that is I don't really know what the record key is for anything anymore. So it doesn't matter what it is. My first question is, what key? Or if you're not going to tell me, I'm going to wait and hear where we are.
Yeah.
Jason Jordan and Matt McAtee throwing me numbers on the gig.
Wow.
How I learned all of the country stuff
Yeah.
that I do. Um, and I treat it as if it was a session. If I don't know signature licks, when people are requesting songs or if it's something we're going to play, I treat it like a session. Here's how I would play it through these chord changes.
Yeah.
And that through the gig just fine. And also, I work with people that are nice enough to go, hey, that song actually has a signature bass part there that if you go to, oh, that's good to know. I've never heard before. So
Yeah.
I love playing music that I've never heard before.
Yeah.
I've never heard half of the stuff I play. I've never heard it. But somebody's going to throw numbers and I'm using my ears.
Yeah. You got great ears.
Nashville Broadway. And anybody who wants to discount working on Broadway in Nashville, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. I'm saying this for all the folks that are doing it well, because not everybody's doing it great. With that many stages, you're going to have some that work. But you got to really be sharp to take, tunes you don't know, and you're playing them and playing them successfully.
Yeah.
So, that there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
Is that, and that as the session scene has changed in town too, I know guys that are, gladly taking the Broadway work and working a lot. Case in point, me. But there are lots of other folks, and making good money from it.
Yeah.
So I got no complaints, man.
Yeah.
Nashville's been very good to me.
Baseball been very, very good to me.
Very, very good to me. Football.
Well, man, this has been amazing, and it's been great to reconnect with you. And man, I had planned on having you on the channel anyway because you're a wealth of knowledge about Nashville and the scene and everything. But man, we want to send our condolences and a rest in peace to Rick Derringer.
God bless Rick Derringer.
And God bless Nashville, and God bless Steve Forrest. Thank you so much for being here today.
God bless Bad Brad Henderson.
Dude.
Yeah, brother.
Thank you so much, man. Go kill him tonight down at Rudy's Jazz Room with the Reggie Wooten and friends.
If I only got paid by the note.
Get paid by the notes, baby.
All right, man.
See you, man. Thank you, brother.
All right, later.
See you.